Hi guys, I'm back again today with another video, and today we're checking out Tiana Thompson, and this is how she sees the US after living in Europe for 6 years. Well, before we do start, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell button, and let's begin. Let's see.
If you grow up in the United States, you're taught a very specific story that it's the best country in the world, that it has the most freedom, the most opportunity, that everyone wants to move here, and that if life feels hard, it's usually a personal problem and not a systemic one. And because of this, the assumption is simple. If you ever leave the US and don't come back, it must be because you failed, or you couldn't handle it, or you're chasing something unrealistic. But here's the part that most people don't realize. You don't fully understand how American life feels until you live somewhere that runs on a completely different baseline. Not necessarily better, just different enough that it exposes all the stresses that you were subconsciously carrying. It's about the everyday differences that shape your stress levels, your nervous system, and what we come to accept as normal without ever questioning it. Today's video is about how living abroad changed the way that I see the US and why I don't count on ever moving back. And if life in the US has ever felt heavy, even when you were doing everything right, this video will probably explain why. For context, I moved to France in 2019 for what was supposed to be just a 1-year exchange. It was a 1-year live-in nannying job in Paris that turned into another year, and then 3 more. And now, 6 years later, I've realized that I'm not still here because I planned it this way. I'm still here because every year, going back to the US just made less and less sense for me.
Mm,
One of the biggest shifts I've noticed since leaving the US is that I'm not constantly on guard anymore. And what's wild is I didn't even realize how much energy this was taking until it just stopped. In the US, safety isn't really something you feel. It's something that you constantly have to manage. You scan exits when you walk into a bar. You clock who's around you in a movie theater. You're making a million little decisions all day: where you park, what time to stop and get gas, what neighborhoods you avoid. And none of this feels dramatic when you're living there. It feels responsible. It feels like you're just being smart. But being this hyper aware all the time means that your body never fully relaxes. And over time, that becomes your baseline, a constant low level bracing everywhere. And the scary part is, once you stop living like that, you realize how much of your personality was just coping. I noticed the changes slowly after I moved here. I stopped scanning exits, stopped flinching at loud noises in public, stopped doing that mental, what would I do if rehearsal every time I went out somewhere. And obviously, no place is 100% safe. Every
yep.
country has its problems. But on a day to day basis, I do feel noticeably safer here and when traveling abroad than I ever did in the States. And once I felt that, it made me start questioning what else I'd quietly been accepting as normal.
Also, culture
In the US, your job isn't
tr-
just what you
treated
do,
like a
it's
moral.
who you are. One of the first questions you get when you meet someone is, "So what do you do?" And it might seem like an innocent question, but in reality, the subtext of that question really means, how valuable are you? How busy are you? Are you winning? How much money are you making? People flex exhaustion as a personality trait. Everyone has their full time job and their side hustle. You answer work emails even when you're sick. And in the off chance you do take a vacation, you're still checking Slack the whole time because being unreachable feels risky. And it's not because Americans uniquely are obsessed with work, it's because the stakes are higher. Your health insurance is tied to your job, your stability is tied to your job. So the idea of work life balance becomes this cute idea that you're supposed to master inside of a system that punishes you for slowing down. In France, work feels more like a category of life, not the center of your identity. People guard their evenings to spend time with family and friends. Time off isn't a moral failure, it's expected, and being unavailable after work hours is completely normal. And yes, salaries here can be lower, but it's okay because the pressure is different when life doesn't feel like it's just one paycheck away from collapsing completely. Because one of the biggest sources of the "I can't slow down" mentality connects to the healthcare system. This was one of the most psychologically draining differences that I didn't actually realize until I had left the States. In the US, not only is healthcare extremely expensive, but it's unpredictable. You can do everything right, pay the highest premiums, and still get punished. And guess what this leads to? You hesitate before going to urgent care because you're not sure what it will cost. You pick jobs partly based on the benefits and not actually the job itself. And you stay at a job longer than you should because losing coverage feels terrifying. And even if you pay for insurance, you still don't feel safe because you don't really know what something will cost until after it happens. When I worked in the ER during college, we literally saw so many patients come in via Uber and rideshare while they were in genuinely bad shape. And it's not because they didn't need an ambulance, but it was because they were afraid of the bill. And that's the part that people underestimate. It's not just money, but it's the constant mental load. Sure, the
Mm.
US has access to some of the top doctors and some of the most high quality advancements in medical technology. But what good is all that if we can't even afford to use it? Living somewhere with a
Exactly, you
boring
know?
but accessible healthcare system really changed my brain. Because when you remove the fear of the bill, you get so much mental space back. And once you feel what life is like without all of that background anxiety, it's really hard to return to a system that makes you negotiate for basic care. And the final piece that makes the idea of moving back to the US feel hard is community. Because in the US, especially today, connection often becomes something that you have to fight
Mm.
for. In the
Individualism turns
US,
into I can't
independence is
read
treated like the
those
ultimate
moving things.
virtue. You pull yourself up by your bootstraps, figure it out yourself, don't rely on anyone, and move states for new opportunities if you have to. And all of this sounds great and it sounds empowering until you realize what this actually costs. A big part of community is third spaces, which are essentially places that aren't work and aren't home, but a separate third space where we can gather and be with community. Cafes, parks, neighborhood spots. And in the US, a lot of those places are either disappearing or have become paywalled. You can't just exist somewhere without being expected to spend money. Another reason why it feels hard to maintain community is because as Americans, we're so spread out. Friends move for job opportunities, family lives in different states, and connection becomes something that you have to schedule in advance. And so when connection starts to require time, energy, and money, it slowly disappears. In France, and in Paris specifically, proximity does a lot of the work. Paris itself isn't a huge city, but it has a huge population of people, and it's a very walkable city, so you don't have to have a car to get by. And so from walking every day from point A to point B, you're naturally surrounded by so many more people, and you have so many more opportunities for connection than you would in the States. Here, you walk more, you see the same people, you become a regular somewhere, and connection starts to happen naturally through repetition instead of through planning. And
I
that really
like
does
that
change
type of
everything because building community stops being a personal project and
community.
just becomes a byproduct of how life here is structured. When you live somewhere long enough, something subtle happens. Not overnight and not necessarily because you're trying to change. Your body just adapts to a different baseline. You stop bracing, you stop rushing, rest stops feeling like failure, safety stops feeling conditional, healthcare stops feeling like a gamble. And once your body learns that version of normal, it doesn't forget it. And that's the part a lot of people miss when they ask why someone wouldn't move back. It's not rejection or resentment, and it's not about hating where you come from. It's about realizing that once you experience a way of living that actually lets you breathe, it becomes very hard to choose a life that doesn't.
Mm. Wow, very well said.
If you grow up in the
Oh,
United
sorry. I think we did react to her last week probably, and she gave us something like she mentioned similar points. So I remember, and yeah, that was very beautiful. Um, maybe I have to look online to see something and find something because I don't want it. Because Philippines is definitely like really Americanized, so not for me really. But anyways, beautiful peeps. If you have any input or you have any videos you want me to check, let me know down in the comment, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.